You know how people always say the 80s were wild? They're not wrong. I'm 63 now, and sometimes I sit on the back porch with a beer in hand, watching the sunset settle over the neighborhood, and I swear I can still feel it. The pulse of music from a boombox, the sting of too much cologne, the crackle of neon signs. And every now and then, I remember him. His name was Danny. We met in the summer of '84. I was 22, out of community college, with no idea what the hell I was doing, convinced I'd be a famous radio DJ someday. I had this beat-up Mustang that always smelled like French fries and weed, a floppy mop of hair I thought was cool, and a job at a little record shop off Ventura Boulevard. The place was dusty and hot, but it had soul. Every inch of that shop reeked of vinyl and rebellion. Danny walked in one Friday afternoon during a heat wave that made the sidewalk feel like a stovetop. He was wearing cut-off jean shorts and a Van Halen tank top, with sweat glistening down his collarbone and that lazy, sharp kind of smile that made you feel like you were already losing a game you didn't know you were playing. "Got anything that's not top 40 garbage?" he said, tossing a crumpled dollar on the counter. I grinned. "Back room. That's where we hide the good stuff from people who ask dumb questions." That was how it started. The back room was barely bigger than a closet, filled with milk crates of records and a busted stereo with wires hanging out the back. He came in a lot after that, sometimes just to hang, sometimes to dig through the dusty crates like he was hunting treasure. We'd sit back there smoking cloves, flipping records, and talking shit about everyone else's taste in music. We both agreed Prince was a genius, Springsteen was overrated, and New Wave was either the best thing ever or total trash depending on the mood. Danny was from Fresno, which he described as a hot dumpster behind a strip mall. He was 20, had run away at 18, and was living in a single-room shoebox with a pet snake and a roommate who slept on the floor. He bartended, took pictures for money sometimes, and had that kind of starving energy, like he was always one step ahead of the world, or one step from falling apart. I didn't know what I was feeling at first. I dated girls, slept with a couple, but it was always just fine, like going through the motions. Danny was different. When he talked, it felt like the whole room was tilting toward him. When he looked at me, it was like he already knew. One night, toward the end of August, we closed the shop early because the AC was busted again. We grabbed a six-pack and climbed onto the roof, laying on the tar paper with our shirts sticking to our backs. "You ever kissed a guy?" Danny asked, like he was asking if I'd ever been to New York. I didn't answer right away. "I haven't," he added, "but I've wanted to." I could feel him watching me. I didn't look over. My heart was beating way too fast for that. "You?" "I don't know," I said, but I did. He shifted closer until I could feel the heat coming off his skin. "I won't tell if you don't," he murmured. And then he kissed me. It was careful and slow. His lips were dry from the heat, and he tasted like beer and cigarettes. And something else, something I didn't have words for then. When he pulled back, he didn't say anything. Neither did I. We just lay there, staring up at the smog-streaked stars, both of us pretending we hadn't just crossed a line we didn't even know we'd been tiptoeing toward. That night was the beginning of something. Or maybe it was the beginning of the end. But I'll never forget it. After that kiss on the rooftop, things didn't go back to normal. Not exactly. Danny still came by the shop, still lit up my afternoons with his sarcasm and ridiculous theories about how Madonna was secretly a prophet. But now, there was something else. This unspoken thing between us, always just under the surface, like a song playing quietly in the background. We didn't talk about it. That was the rule. Even if it was never said aloud. He'd sit on the counter when I closed up, kicking his legs while I counted out the register. One night, he threw a grape blow pop at me and said, "You still thinking about it?" I froze, halfway through sorting the fives. "Thinking about what?" he grinned. "Exactly." I didn't answer, and he didn't press. That was Danny. He knew how to let silence say what words couldn't. It was early September when he asked if I wanted to go for a drive. I didn't ask where. I just grabbed my keys, locked up, and we jumped into my Mustang. We drove out past the city, past the dull glow of the strip malls, and into the hills where it got dark enough to see real stars. We parked behind an abandoned diner off the highway, the kind of place with a broken neon sign and old gum still stuck to the pavement. The air was thick with dust and night. I remember he leaned his head back against the seat, eyes closed, music playing low from the tape deck, psychedelic furs, or maybe ion excess. I couldn't really hear it over the pounding in my chest. I didn't say anything for a long time. Then I asked, "You ever tell anyone?" Danny's eyes opened slowly. "What? That I kissed the hot guy from the record store?" I snorted. "Shut up," he shrugged. "No, not really anyone's business, is it?" That answer, casual, careless, hit harder than I expected. It reminded me that this thing between us lived in the shadows, a secret. "Does it freak you out?" I asked, fingers tightening on the steering wheel. He turned to face me fully then, his smile gone. "No, you?" I wanted to say no, wanted it to be simple, but it wasn't. "I don't know," I admitted. "It's not like I've done this before." Danny leaned forward, eyes searching mine. "So don't think so hard about it. It's not a test." We sat there in silence. The music shifted to a slower song, something echoey and bittersweet, and he reached over and turned the volume up just a little. Then, without warning, he reached for my hand, just rested his palm over mine, fingers brushing gently. It felt like everything in me went still. We stayed like that for a while. No kissing, no talking, just holding hands in an old car behind a dead diner, the world somehow feeling smaller and bigger all at once. After that night, I couldn't stop thinking about him. Not just the way he looked, but the way he made me feel. Like I wasn't crazy. Like maybe there was something good waiting if I stopped being so damn scared. But the world wasn't ready. Or maybe I wasn't. Back then, even in LA, being out wasn't something you just did unless you were braver than me. And I wasn't brave. Not yet. There was a dive bar in North Hollywood that never checked IDs and always smelled like spilled gin and regret. Danny and I started going there on Thursdays because the jukebox was busted and the bartender didn't care if you sat in the back booth and didn't buy anything. We made it our spot. One night, he showed up with a black eye and didn't say a word about it. Just slid into the booth across from me, stole a fry from my plate, and grinned like nothing had happened. "You good?" I asked, nodding toward his face. "Yeah," he said, shrugging. "Bouncer at the club I shoot for got handsy with the wrong guy. Wrong guy happened to be me." I didn't believe him. Not fully. But I didn't press. Danny never explained more than he wanted to, and pushing him only made him push back harder. But that night, he didn't steal just fries. He stole glances. And at one point, under the sticky amber light, he leaned forward and said, "You ever think about what it would be like if it wasn't so hard?" "What do you mean? If we could just walk into a party holding hands and not get our asses kicked for it?" I stared at him, not sure what to say. He sighed and leaned back, watching the condensation run down his beer bottle. "Never mind." I wanted to say it did matter, that I thought about it too. That sometimes I imagined us somewhere else, somewhere easier. But I didn't. I just sat there, quiet, while the silence between us got heavier. We didn't talk about that night again. The next few weeks were a blur. Work, late-night drives, bad pizza, mixtapes with titles like Danny's Excellent No Homo Adventure in his handwriting. We'd kiss sometimes, always when it felt like we were suspended in time. In my car, behind closed doors, never in daylight, never when someone could see. One night after a long shift, I came home to find him sitting on my porch steps. He had a duffel bag at his feet and this look on his face like the ground had fallen out from under him. "What happened?" I asked, already bracing. "Roommate found my camera. The one with the roll from the motel." I knew what that meant. He'd taken some photos, just of me, shirtless, half lit by the bedside lamp. It wasn't porn, it wasn't even that explicit, but it was enough to get him kicked out, or worse. He said if I didn't leave by midnight, he'd make sure every guy in that building knew I was a faggot. The way he said that word, flat, emotionless, hit harder than anything else. "You can crash here," I said, barely thinking. He looked up at me like he hadn't expected that. "You sure?" "Yeah," I nodded. "I got an air mattress." He didn't say thanks, just grabbed his bag and followed me inside. That night, he didn't sleep on the mattress. He curled up next to me on my narrow twin bed, and neither of us said a word about it. We just lay there, tangled up in each other, not even trying to pretend it meant nothing anymore. I think that was the night I realized I loved him. But love in 1984 wasn't safe. It wasn't paraded on TV or sung about on the radio unless it ended in tragedy. And I wasn't sure I had it in me to fight all the noise. I just knew I didn't want to lose him. The record store fired me a week after Danny moved in. Some bullshit about cash drawer discrepancies and attitude problems. I knew what it was really about. Someone had seen us in the back, too close, too many times. I didn't tell Danny the full truth, just said they were cutting back. He didn't press. That was his thing, pretending not to notice the things he already knew. We both started picking up random gigs. I took a job sweeping up after hours at a bowling alley, and he landed a couple low-paying photo assignments, weddings, a band promo shoot, even a punk zine spread that paid in weed and leftover bagels. It was survival, but it was ours. Nights were when we came alive. We'd sit on the roof of my building, legs dangling over the edge, passing a warm beer between us while the city hummed beneath. Some nights he'd fall asleep with his head on my shoulder, mouth slightly open, hair sticking to his forehead from the heat. I never moved. Just sat there listening to him breathe, like the whole world had stopped spinning long enough for me to remember how lucky I was. 4th of July came and went like any other night, until it didn't. We were walking back from a bar downtown. Fireworks still crackled in the sky behind us. Danny was buzzing from cheap rum and adrenaline, telling some story about a fight he almost got into with a club promoter who didn't want to pay him. "You should have seen his face," he said, laughing, like I'd never thrown a punch in my life. "Have you?" "1 or 2, he grinned, drunken and wildly ineffective, but still. He pulled me into an alley just off Melrose, said he had to piss, but then didn't. Instead, he turned around and looked at me, really looked at me, and suddenly it was like the night folded in on itself. "You're not gonna kiss me?" he said, voice low. I glanced around, my pulse hammering in my ears. Here? No one's looking. That's not the point. Then what is? He was right in front of me now, the smell of smoke and sweat on his skin. "Why are you still scared?" he asked, softer this time. "I'm not scared," I lied. Danny reached up and touched my face. Just his thumb along my jaw, nothing more. "You are, and that's okay. But I need to know if this is real for you." I didn't know what to say. The alley was lit by a flickering neon sign above a pizza joint, the glow making his eyes look almost golden. "I think about you all the time," I said finally. "Every day, every time I wake up and you're next to me. I think about you when I hear a song you'd love, when I smell coffee, when I see some weird guy with ripped jeans and a camera. I wonder if he knows what he wants half as much as I do." Danny's smile faded into something quieter. "Then show me." So I kissed him, right there, in that grimy alley with fireworks echoing in the distance and the distant thump of club music vibrating through the pavement. I kissed him like we weren't afraid of anything. It was messy and a little too desperate, but it was real. For the first time, it felt like we weren't hiding. Later that night, lying in bed, his arm thrown across my stomach and his breath warm against my shoulder, he whispered, "I don't want to keep doing this if you're ashamed of me." I turned to face him, heart pounding. "I'm not." "You sure?" I nodded. "I'm just trying to figure out how to be who I am when the world's not ready for it." Danny didn't say anything for a long time. Then he kissed my forehead and said, "Then I'll wait." Summer started to slip into fall. The nights got cooler. The city smelled different, less like sun-baked pavement, more like rain that never quite arrived. Danny and I fell into a rhythm that felt almost like real life. We'd wake up tangled together, trade shifts doing odd jobs, and spend our nights pretending we didn't know how fragile it all was. Sometimes it was perfect, like on Sundays. Sunday mornings were quiet. We'd make terrible coffee and sit on the floor of our tiny apartment, backs against the couch, listening to records. No TV, no chatter, just Bowie or The Replacement spinning low, his head resting on my shoulder, the sound of cars outside blending into the scratch of vinyl. "You ever think we'll have more than this?" he asked once, tracing the rim of his coffee mug with one finger. "Like what?" "Like jobs that don't suck. A place with more than one room. Maybe even a life where we don't have to lie about who we are." I didn't answer right away. I wanted to believe it, but hope had always felt like a dangerous luxury. "I think about it," I said finally. "I just don't know if it'll ever be safe." Danny nodded. "Yeah, but I want it anyway." That scared me more than anything, how badly I wanted it too. But the world didn't stop being the world just because we'd built a quiet pocket of it for ourselves. One night, we were at a club downtown. Danny's shooting photos for a queer punk band with a name I still can't say out loud without laughing. The place was packed, sweat and beer and eyeliner bleeding under strobe lights. He was in his element, camera clicking like a heartbeat. After the set, he dragged me backstage, still buzzing. "They want to do a promo shoot next weekend," he said. "You should come. It's up in Laurel Canyon. Super weird house, apparently. Built like a boat or something." I was mid-laugh when a guy walked past us, shoved his shoulder into mine, and muttered, "Faggots." It happened fast. Too fast. Danny grabbed my arm before I could react. "Don't," he said, voice steady, "but he's not worth it." I wanted to punch something. Not just because of the slur, but because of how casual it was, how normal. Like a flick of lint off someone's coat. Like a reminder that the world was still watching, and still ready to tear us apart. Later that night, back home, I sat on the fire escape with a cigarette I didn't want and asked, "Aren't you tired?" Danny came out and leaned against the rail beside me. "Of what?" "Hiding, worrying, being scared someone's gonna see us kiss and decide they get to be judge, jury, and executioner." He lit his own cigarette. "Yeah, I'm tired. But you never show it." He gave me a crooked smile. "Doesn't mean I don't feel it." We didn't talk much after that. Just sat there while the city breathed around us, headlights flashing across brick walls, laughter echoing from a block away, a train wailing somewhere distant like a ghost. That night I realized something. I wasn't scared of being with him. I was scared of losing him, scared that the world would get to him first. And I think deep down he knew that too. October hit like a movie montage. Gray skies, denim jackets, and puddles reflecting neon signs. Danny started sleeping later, staying out longer. Said he was trying to build a portfolio, meet people, hustle his way into something real. I wanted to believe that was all it was. But I saw it in his eyes. The tiredness, the edge, like he was balancing on a wire and starting to lean. One night he came home drenched, hair matted to his forehead, camera bag slung over his shoulder like a burden. "Caught in it?" I asked, pointing at the rain outside. He nodded. And then some asshole tried to mug me on the train platform. "What, are you okay?" "Yeah." Didn't get anything, just roughed me up a little. I reached for him, instinctively, but he pulled away. "I'm fine." "Danny." I said I'm fine. We didn't talk the rest of the night. The next morning, I woke up to the sound of the door clicking shut. He was gone. No note, just a cold dent in the sheets beside me and his jacket still dripping by the window. Days passed. I called around. Friends, clubs, the few numbers I had from his gigs, nothing. Everyone said the same thing, haven't seen him. I went back to the diner where we first kissed, sat in the alley where he made me say how I felt, hoping some piece of him had been left behind. Finally, 4 days later, he came back. His knuckles were bruised, His eyes were red. "You left," I said, standing in the doorway, the apartment still dark behind me. "I didn't mean to," he said, voice rough. Things got loud in my head. I had to get out." I let him in. He collapsed onto the couch like his bones hurt. "You could have called." "I know." We sat in silence. Then he said, "I don't think I can keep doing this." Something cold gripped my chest. "What do you mean?" "This. Living like this. Hiding. Fighting. Getting spit on in the street for holding your hand. You're giving up?" He looked at me then, really looked at me. "No, I'm trying to survive." I didn't have an answer. That night, we didn't sleep together. Not out of anger, just distance. Like something between us had shifted, cracked, but not shattered. He moved out a week later, said he needed space, and I didn't stop him. Maybe I should have. Maybe if I had, everything would have been different. For a while, we kept in touch. A postcard here, a call there. He ended up in New York. Said it was louder but lonelier too. I stayed in LA, eventually found a real job, a real apartment, and someone else. Someone quieter, easier, less electric, but it was never the same. 39 years have passed since that summer. I've had a whole life since then. A couple long-term relationships, a mortgage, a dog named Charlie. Some years were good, some are not. But Danny? He's never really left. Every now and then, I'll hear a song, Love My Way or Boys Don't Cry, and it's like I'm back in that Mustang, engine rumbling beneath us, the air between us thick with possibility and fear. I found a photo of him last year, tucked in the back of an old Smith's LP, one he took of us in the mirror of that tiny bathroom in our apartment. I'm brushing my teeth, he's holding the camera, his smile lazy and crooked. There's toothpaste on my cheek. I sat on the floor and cried when I saw it. He emailed me once, maybe 10 years ago. Said he was doing freelance work for a gallery in Brooklyn. Living with someone, a painter. He sounded okay. Older. Softer. I never replied. Not because I didn't want to, but because I didn't know what I'd say. How do you sum up a fire that almost burned your life down? How do you thank someone for teaching you who you really are, even if it hurt? Danny was a storm. Beautiful. Terrifying. Unstoppable. And part of me will always be 22 on that rooftop, tasting clove smoke and possibility. Now, I live in a quiet neighborhood. I garden. I grill. I go to the same coffee shop every Saturday and flirt with the guy behind the counter who's too young and too polite to flirt back. Sometimes I think about telling him this story. About Danny. About the alley. The rooftop. The record store. But I don't. Instead, I walk home with my coffee, sit on the porch, and remember the loudest nights of my life. And I smile. Because even though it ended, even though we broke in ways that never fully healed, I gotta love him. And that, after all these years, still matters more than anything.